Well, good morning, everyone. What an interesting panel. We started from city building or nation building to those beautiful buildings, individual work of art. And I would like to talk about Wuhan Tiandi, which is a little neighborhood, like a little district. Wuhan is the name of the city. Tiandi is heaven and earth. It's the developer's aspiration to set a really nice place for this new mixed-use community. So we're talking about actually designing from all different scales in China. And then some of the items I'll be talking about is some of the challenges of Chinese cities, the new national urban plan for China, and the commitment to livable and sustainable development, historic preservation. Just a little bit of background. Many of the Chinese cities are facing incredible pressure. For example, in the 10-year period from 1995 to 2005, the Chinese urban population has grown from 29% of the population to 65%, which means an increase of 211 million urban population. That's equivalent to building 78 Chicagos in 10 years. And there are 15 mega cities, those what we classified as more than 10 million in population, and they spread from the north, Harbin, all the way down to south. So how do we design cities that's livable, growing really fast, and then it contains the necessary, all the uses to accommodate this new urbanized population? Many of the Chinese cities, they have to grow so fast, and also because of their sunlight loss, as you can see on this picture, many buildings are kind of long sides, east-west, facing south. So they become, a relentless repetition of these south-facing buildings, and then also high-density sprawl. And of course, those are the problems, but China also has some really incredible high-rise buildings. 11 out of the 20 tallest buildings are in China. So they mark the city's skyline. They also represent the aspiration and technological advance of the cities. But with all these guidance, it's not that, the country also recognizes the need. So in the new National Planning Urban Plan, in there, it recognizes that the need to create a compact urban development, the ecological civilization, create a natural cultural preservation, and agriculture improvements, and then people-oriented planning, and then the need to transition from speed to quality. You can see that the land urbanization is faster than population growth in here, partially because of improved living standard, and also the workspaces increase a lot per person. Farmland is being lost in low density to low density, and also high density sprawl. And then air, water, soil, and other pollutions are getting worse, and is of heightened alert. There are also natural, historical, and cultural heritage are being destroyed. So with all that, of course, water quality and quantities are also at serious risk, and that's of a major concern for the growing cities. So how do we get all that together? We've seen that goals, and that's why the nation has set up these development goals. So these are very new policies. And those are some kind of background for the Wuhan Tiandi project, which was planned more than about 10 years ago. So the city of Wuhan is in the middle of China. You can see on the little insert map on the right. And then it is on both sides of the Yangtze River. It consists of 3 major districts. The city has always been the industrial area for the center part of China. And it was a trading post. And then it comes, also at the turn of the century, they have the downtown is more European in its character, with the exception of a small part at the intersection of the river that has the traditional Chinese city. And then it also has a lot of European trading banks and other companies, their little buildings dotted along the river. So it's an eclectic Chinese and European city. It has grown in that period that I was talking about, from about 5 million to 10 million. So the city has doubled. In this picture, this is kind of how the city looked like today, with just behind the Red Bridge. They are the more Chinese, traditional Chinese towns, but there are also a lot of new buildings with those historical buildings that I was just talking about fronting the river. So in committing, in sort of undertaking this particular development, the developer Shuiyang Land has a few commitments for themselves. That's what they call their 9 principles for master planning. They are committed to build mixed-use project. They would like to create vibrant lifestyle centers, walkable blocks, a good linkage to transportation. They also want to respect local culture, and then very much so committed to environmental sustainability. And then, so they also have a commitment to their environmental sustainability is all their development will achieve LEED ND certification, and all the new buildings will achieve either LEED ND or the Chinese Green Buildings certification. And they also would like to reduce their own commitment to reduce the carbon emissions by 20% from their 2011 height. And then all the new projects actually are installed with energy monitoring system. So I would talk more about the master plan. There were a few guiding principles that we were trying to do. First is working on site selection. Definitely pick a site that has existing transit services. And also develop walkable blocks, much smaller blocks at human scale. You can see it on the insert on the left. That is the original plan, which very large area is only 2 blocks, 2 giant blocks, served by 3 major streets around it. In plan, we subdivided that into smaller blocks to enable kind of dense urban streets and urban and comfortable environment. And then very much to creating human scale walkable blocks. And then also the idea of creating mixed use. So they will contribute to a little bit of job housing balance, and also the vibrancy of a 24-hour, 7 days city. So you can see that a typical development on the left, they are pretty much single use. A lot of residential only needed public facilities like school, a little bit of retail, or the business area are totally focused on commercial. This area, which is the drawing on the right, to show that it actually has a combination of commercial, which is red, and orange for offices and retail, plus yellow, which are housing. And then this project also has, it's a kind of transit-oriented development with the subway just on the lower left-hand corner outside the picture. What is also interesting here is just now I saw a picture of these Chinese cities with, repetition of east, west, south-facing buildings. Because of the mixed use and also the views to the river, we managed to convince the community to accept buildings not of that similar repetition of south-facing buildings, but create a mixture of different heights and different building type, and even orientation at a slightly different angle. This is a problem which is very common in China and also some countries in the Southeast Asia, where projects tend to be the fenced, a gated community. If the developer owns 10 hectares, it's the 10-hectare community. If the developer owns 20 hectares, it's the 20-hectare community. In this case on the left is the 300-hectare development. It's a one gated community. So we tested the idea of creating smaller gated community actually on a block basis, which is shown on the right. And it turned out to be very well received by the residents. And yes, this also talk about the particular urban form where a business usual, a conventional approach is like that picture on the left. You know, buildings of similar heights and similar orientation. And we introduced also the idea of lower-rise building, which is defining as very successful public spaces, and then high-rise buildings as we need to pick up the density and the vibrancy of the place. Historic preservation is also a very important part of this project. They were some older homes. They are not really the historical architecture gem, but it's really the buildings that consist of the character of the past era. So we managed to preserve many of those buildings and created a place that makes old and new. Some of the red roof buildings, they were the historical building, and there were a few that is not necessarily red roof. And it's kind of mixing together with new buildings to create this interesting historical flavored district. Some of those are kind of nicer buildings, were converted into clubhouses and restaurants, retail areas. And then even trees, there were quite a number of mature trees. So the developers committed to convince for the idea to preserve many of the heritage trees. And then that allows the composition of heritage trees and the historical building to give real identity to this particular part of the project. And in many of the residential areas, we created these newer courtyards surrounding by kind of 5-6-story buildings, which kind of recreate a connection to the historical courtyard houses of Wuhan. They are also, of course, mixed use with many commercial uses, which are more located closer to the subway station, the light rail station on the lower left. And then, so they are the commercial food and beverage district, large-scale retail of different kinds. This was that historical district, which is more of food and beverage with small restaurants and also entertainment complex on one corner. And then in the design, we also were careful in kind of looking into creating an attractive and exciting path through the area. So you could see like somewhat a green path loop around the area with the circle roof, which was an historical building, as the focus. So within there, we created very interesting point of community gathering, outdoor dining, but also special places for special events and cultural celebrations. And then on top of that, there was an art program to install and introduce permanent arts in the area and also temporary expression. They invite artists to showcase their project, and then it changes regularly. In addition to that smaller kind of fine-grain scale, very vibrant retail areas, there are also larger buildings, office towers with retail on the ground level. So the one that I talk about was still kind of small-scale lifestyle food and beverage, but they also have a very large kind of shopping complex. And then interesting office building. This is one of the landmark office towers near the transit station. In terms of sustainability, we not only talk about all different uses and commitment to that through design, we were looking at creating a variety of open spaces that you can see the longer open space, the finger park, there were a few of them. They not only provide view to Yangtze River, but also provide different other uses. Like here, it's a buffer between the commercial district and residential district. Another finger open space was really the center of the community recreation facilities. So many of those open spaces are open to the public. But within each unit, we've talked about, residential units. We have pocket parks that's shared by different blocks and different residential clusters. And so they create the kind of green street and then linkages for the community. And the finger parks also serve the function of creating ventilation, bringing ventilation from the river to the inner side of the city. And we also try to step the buildings, lower towards the river so that more of them gets the wonderful view of the city. And in the architecture design, we have also introduced different manners to kind of create comfortable outdoor environment without the need to do air conditioning. So these are little mist that is very well liked in the hot summer season. And then all these, and then there will be green roofs and other features that help to achieve the sustainability goals. This is something really interesting, and that came out to be a surprise to many of the urban residents. Before the site was fully developed, many of the plots was actually developed and actually leased to the residents so they can do their own community farm. And it turned out to be a very popular program. So we were trying to figure out locations that may be permanent community farms. This also introduced to this urbanized population, especially the younger generation, their connection to food production and connection to the land. So as I was mentioning earlier, actually the entire neighborhood plan has got the LEED ND certification. And the new buildings all have different kind of green, either LEED or Chinese green building certification. So we were very proud to be part of the team that created this living model for urban habitat, which in many ways is a very popular destination, both for the commercial retail, but also as a living environment. And then it definitely served as a catalyst for major riverfront commercial and mixed-use development. So in the foreground, the kind of more brown color buildings were Wuhan Tiandi, and then more of the commercial buildings and then other mixed-use development are developing along the water. And of course, a community is not the work of the developer or master planner. Actually, there are many players and that contributes to the achievements of the project, including architects, engineers, developers, and many other professionals. So we have a very large team that works towards creating this livable model. So thank you very much.
Thank you.